Hi there. Oh, good. Yeah, we're just seeing, we'll start in, 3 seconds. We're going to start. So I'll ask the panelists to come on up. And so I think we'll just introduce kind of our session and then go ahead and get started as people continue to come in from the beautiful weather outside. So good. Welcome to our panel. So I'm Paul Westerhoff. I'm a professor here at Arizona State University, and I'll be the moderator for our fantastic panel. So the agenda and bios are up there, and you can kind of see their names. So what we're going to do is I have some questions, then we'll pause. We're going to wild card, kind of leave it open to the audience to ask a few, and then we'll come back and ask a few more. So everyone has a microphone. So maybe in just 2 or 3 minutes, if you could tell us like who you are, but then, tell us about something you've done successfully in the last 1 to 5 years and what problem you solved as we really sit here and think about both technology, innovation, venture, capital investment. And in the previous session, it was about like infrastructure, large scale financing of long-term infrastructure. But here we're going to focus a little bit more on the technology in the infrastructure that makes the infrastructure work. So Christina?
Okay. Hope everyone had a great lunch. I got curry on my jacket somehow, wearing white. It always happens.
Who did it?
I know. Who bumped into me? It was great lunch, by the way, so thank you. I'm Christina Ahmedpour. I'm the president of Isle Utilities North America business. Isle Utilities is a consultancy focused on technology, strategy, and leadership. For the water industry, about 80% of what we do around the world is with municipal water, about 20% is industrial water. We're a team of about 100 people around the world, and we're a bit unique as a player in the ecosystem in that we work directly with the end user, or in other words, customer. So everyone you've heard from today are solution providers. They're providing technical expertise, money, technical support, whatever it is. We serve as a very unique player in this industry. I would say really the only one at scale that's done it. That work.
Christina?
Yes?
What's something you've solved in the last 5 years?
Oh, sorry, am I going off tangent? I thought we were doing an intro.
It's good. I'm just,
Okay, thanks.
Dean knows me, and he said keep it edgy.
Okay. I thought we were doing intro, but okay, okay, so fast forward, we work with the customer. 2 things I want to highlight. Leadership is a big challenge when accelerating innovation in water. So in the last 2 years, we acquired an organization that was focused on executive leadership forums. We've scaled that up. We've doubled the participants in that, and we're really focused on the C-suite level of decision-making to educate them on what innovation is, what that looks like. And then the other is we've started a program called the Trial Reservoir, which is a way to commercialize at scale technologies, so TRL 9, that have been demonstrated but are still going through that sort of valley of death to adoption. And so this program bridges that gap, and I could talk about that more if interested.
Awesome. Thank you for bearing with me. So Dean, what is Plug and Play? Where do they fit relative to, say, TRL 9, and what's the success over the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to learn more about that kind of demonstration side and how startups could plug into that. So Plug and Play is a unique organization in that we're both a venture capital investor that invests in early stage, pre-seed, seed, Series A stage startups. We also do corporate innovation, which is primarily open innovation services and scouting startups for Fortune 500 companies to work with. And then we also run startup accelerator programs that are free for startups, typically paired with a university or government entity to help them with their business development, connect them to mentors and other resources to be able to grow. Typically, it's around the TRL 4 or 5, I would say, if we're talking hardware, that we typically work with that are close to a minimum viable product that they can sell to enterprises. That's where we can come in and kind of help broker those relationships to our partners and other major corporations that we work with to be able to get a customer, hopefully get a pilot project going and be able to scale that up to a more long-term vendor relationship where the startup is selling their technology to these corporations. A lot of what we do is a lot of times behind NDA and things like that, but we do have a local success story we're particularly proud of of a local vertical farming startup, Series B startup, and a local food distribution company that were not aware of each other, and they were not asking to talk to each other, but we kind of forced them into a room and said, hey, we think there could be a partnership here. And now they've signed a multi-million-dollar contract, and it's their first revenue-generating customer. And that was water-related because they do use aeroponic vertical farming techniques. And it's that kind of brokering, when our corporate partners ask for it, and sometimes we just show them new things that we think complements their business strategy, and sometimes it clicks. So that's one that we're particularly proud of.
So great. Dan from Veralto, you're bullish on water. So maybe introduce yourself briefly and a success story over the last 5 years. Yeah, you have to hold it closer, we were advised.
I'm going to do something different. It is very close.
Oh, that one, yeah, so maybe still.
What about now? We are. So I'm going to use another edge. I'm going to say things that I've done wrong over the last 5 years. Just to twist it here. But first, I'm part of Veralto. Veralto is a very large corporation who owns a number of brands very well established in the water sector, such as Trojan Technologies, which does UV disinfections. Anybody who has been in a lab in the water sector probably know HAC instruments. So that's part of who we are, and a series of other companies. I lead the early stage innovation sector. I've been with a group about 10 years. I've been doing innovation for the last 20. I have like 78 years old. But let me tell you what I've learned, even though I knew the lesson, I read it in the books, and I made a mistake again, okay? So when we do innovation in Veralto, we focus on solving a customer problem, okay? We start from there. We are different maybe from universities that have passion for the technology. We go and focus on understanding a customer problem. And what I've learned was we didn't do a very good customer validation, and we trigger, an innovation effort without having a proper validation of the problem and without a good definition on what were the thresholds to kill that project. Okay, so you need to advance, and in the innovation side, in life, the most valuable thing that you have is time. So you don't want to be wasting time on the wrong idea. If you don't have a good clarity.
I'm going to push you, be specific. What did you do that wasn't the right thing for this one that failure?
We drove innovation without a clear understanding of the customer problem. And you need to be sure that you understand the customer problem and that you have clarity and confirmation that the customer is going to act on the problem. Okay, if you don't have confirmation that it's going to act on the problem, you end up on the pilot valley of death. You do pilots and pilots and pilots, the customer likes the technology, it's a nice to have, it doesn't do anything. So in this case, we came to the end, we got clarity that it was not a good fit of the solution, and we have to stop a project 1.5 years after we started.
So we're going to come back to success and failures of pilots. You teed us up really well there. So Pete, you're from another country. You're going to have to guess as soon as he starts talking, but tell us who you are and success in the last few years.
I'll put everyone out of their misery. So I'm Pete, I'm British, and I'm from the University of Exeter in the UK. I'd just like to say thanks to the facilities team, what with it being Paddy's week, for changing all the seats out just for me. That was really kind of you guys. So I'm the director of our Centre for Water Systems, University of Exeter. So we're based in an engineering department. We have a partnership with ASU, which is why we're in town looking jet lagged for the last couple of days. But one of the things that we're working on campus, and kind of one of the things we've done well in the UK, we have held the world #1 impact rating for water and sanitation in the impact ratings. We have held that. We don't currently hold that. But we're working back towards that under this water net zero premise. So we're working to turn the campus into a living lab, get as much data out of it as possible. And as part of that, we deployed 100 ultra-low flush toilets. So these 100 ultra-low flush toilets, they do 0.5 gallon flush. I've converted that. Not 1.5 gallon flush, okay? So they're 2/3 better than a normal toilet. Then what's the problem? The problem is downstream, the sewer network doesn't have enough water, right? So we set up an Internet of Things monitoring platform. We did CCTV surveys, and we've written a paper to show that it's perfectly okay on our campus to have 100 toilets that have ultra-low flush, and the system still works. So, we take that small step to demonstrate that that toilet system is viable. They're still £1,000. They're the first washing machine, but the technology's there, and we've taken that baby step with them.
Great. And I think when we were talking the other day, I'm like, this sounds familiar. Does anyone watch this BBC show on technology? It's really fun. They're usually about 7 minutes, and they interview kind of innovation and different things. And this was on like sensors they were putting down manholes, and they started talking about fatbergs. And I'm like, fatbergs? Like, what's a fatberg? And so at some point you're going to have to tell us maybe about these fatbergs in your experience. But it turned out to be, a group from Exeter that was looking at kind of the AI to go with sensors or something. Is that right?
Okay, so yeah, I'm mid-career, but the senior career guys, one of them's just stepped down, is Dragon Savage. He was the head of our center, and about year 2000, he founds our center. By 2001-2, he's using AI to resolve challenges in the water space. Okay, so 2023, people from Microsoft start turning up and trying to teach us AI, and everyone in the department's scratching their heads and trying to work out what this new AI is in comparison to these other optimization tools. But what we've seen in the UK, coming back to the fatbergs, what we've seen in the UK is a plethora of new data monitoring opportunities. It'll be the same here. Industry 4.0 is probably the tag. If the AI might be Industry 5.0, but we now have, and just pause and think about this for a second, we have 200,000 sewer level monitors giving us real-time data across our networks in the UK. So some companies have them nearly every half mile in the network. And so we can do blockage prevention by spotting the blockage as they're developing and then getting them jetted before you have a problem. So the UK's gone hard and fast on that technology, and we're starting to see them come across here.
I think that's a great example of a pilot that integrates hardware sensors with AI. So Dean, Dean and I know each other just like a little bit, but he always you say you're going to throw me a curveball. So here's your curveball, right? So if you have to pitch one of the companies that needs a pilot that you know about in plug and play and water, what are you looking for? What pilot are you looking? What company that do you know of in your ecosystem that just is desperate for the right timing for a pilot? And what do you think about pilots broadly? Like, how do you design a good one?
Yeah, I think you need to clearly scope a pilot and understand what does success look like? What is the data that you're trying to have represented on the performance of your system? I think a lot of hardware startups need more at-bats, right? It's just really difficult to test these out, test out new membrane technologies or filtration technologies in an environment that can replicate the enterprise's true infrastructure in a place that's de-risked and is sort of off their premises, but they can still contribute to dialing in that pilot to get that data that corresponds to their systems. So a lot of them need sort of these sandboxes, as you might hear that type of term, these physical spaces where folks can deploy the technology, have even third parties like ASU students being able to collect and validate that the technology performs well. That's outside of just those startup founders doing it themselves in their own lab. So getting to those sandboxes and having them available is a critical step that we would like to see more of in the ecosystem.
So more pilots? Is that what you're saying? You need more and more and more pilots?
Well, I think these sandboxes can kind of be an intermediary step before you truly have a pilot where you're getting to that TRL 7 or 8 in that relative, in that true environment, but you have a relative sort of simulated environment where you can prove it out at a certain level beyond the bench lab, that then that enterprise will go, if it can perform, and these third parties can validate it and it can perform in that environment that's similar to ours, we'll give you a shot. And it makes it a lot easier to bridge that gap than going straight from bench to enterprise.
Yeah, so Dan has something to say here.
Yeah, so
we'll come to Christina.
Yeah, and I want to go to Christina. So actually, I think we're using the word pilot very broadly. Okay, so there is an element of pilot that the founder or the startup needs to run okay, to validate their technology. So you're just trying to understand, does it work? And what is the space that it works? The customer needs to know that there is a high risk of technology is not going to work. That's a purpose of it, one purpose. The other one is now you are trying to sell the technology that has been validated, and you have to go with confidence, because a lot of utilities, they don't want to try new technologies because they don't have the money to do the pilot, and they don't want to be in the newspaper saying, I pay $1 million for a pilot and it failed. Now, it's normal that it fails if you are a startup and something doesn't work. So you have to differentiate those two. And if you are going for the pilot that is, I'll prove you that the technology works, immediately you need to have, and I will let Christina talk about it, but you need to have the hook and you implement it. That's different from the technology is on TRL6, doesn't work, but we gain a lot of data, to I'll prove you that it works. And if it works, they need to have the budget to execute it. Otherwise, you are piloting for the R&D people that are just curious about technology. They don't want to solve a problem.
So Christina, what do you think about pilots, and how do you know like what success should be? Whose problems are you solving? Is it an engineer or an operator that just is curious, or how do you think about good pilots?
Okay. Can I answer in a different way, maybe?
Of course, yeah. Pilots is the topic.
So I think something that's I'm discovering is a pet peeve of mine in this, like the technology entrepreneur space, is it's always about solving the problem. And I get that you need to understand what problem you're solving. But I think we also miss the opportunities that can be created, the value creation that happens when innovation thrives. So, focus on the problem, but also focus on the opportunity. Bring opportunity, create value, that's what innovation is. It's creating things that we didn't know we needed, right? So I think we need to just kind of open our minds a little bit. I will say, pilot with intentionality, we talked about this before, or demonstrate, pilot, demonstration, trial, they all mean something slightly different. I think it's really important to bring all the stakeholders as early as possible. And back to this trial reservoir program that we run, the companies like Xylem, which is one of the largest companies in water, are involved at the very early stages of the conversation. They don't have a stake in that, the customer and the technology provider, but they're there as an observer, as a partner in the ecosystem. And why is that important? Because they are part of the scale-up of solutions. So if they have the awareness of those solutions, they're part of those conversations early on, they create part of the feedback loop, but they also are a potential buyer or channel partner, and that needs to be part of the conversation early on. The other thing I'm going to just say is, when you talk about who you're piloting with, for those that are entrepreneurs or integrators or investors, whoever, whatever role you play, I think we need to be very disciplined and intentional about who is the partner in terms of the customer, right? So are they there as a partner because they've got the right site and they're willing to give the data and the subject matter expertise? Know that that's their role and have that conversation with them, because there's an endpoint and you need to find the next partner that's going to help, go to that next scale. So those conversations are important. In the water industry, you don't want to pilot with everybody. You want to pilot with those that are wanting to be partners early on. That's a very small percent. The diffusion of innovation concept says 10% generally are the innovators. Those are the ones that are willing to be the disruptors and lead the way. In the water industry, I would say that's much less than 10%. So anyone that's trying to move the needle should be working with that smaller percentage is my point.
Yeah, so, as you were saying this, there's, I don't know if any of you know Megan Plumley at Orange County. She thinks about piloting in a very different way. They do wastewater reuse and recharge, and they have PFAS challenges and lots of other challenges. And so I talk to her sometimes about what is her role in this ecosystem, and why does Orange County let so many companies come there and innovate, and how many have they actually paid for and adopted? So I think some of these are really vital in the water sector to give companies a head start. But I'd be curious, what do you think? I mean, I don't know, they're still moving slowly, but maybe in the UK. So Peter, what do you think of these entities that they have problems, are willing for people to come into their sandbox, but they might not buy everything, to Dan's point, or be the decision maker to buy something. So what do you do in the UK maybe for comparison?
Well, first of all, I've had the privilege of drinking the OC groundwater, that's been through the system. And then secondly, we have this terminology in the UK of pilotitis. I'm not sure if that has
Pilotitis,
arrived in
okay.
the US. But I don't have a problem with pilotitis because of the 10x problem, right? You're going to have 10 projects that go through a pilot for one of them to be the thing that's going to grow. So those sandboxes, like you refer to, like the OC wastewater reuse unit, that's enabling lots of organizations to bring their propositions. And so from a researcher perspective, from an academic, I want as many people as possible to go and enjoy real world pilots so that they can come back having failed or successfully retired their proposition, so they can still feel warm inside. And then they can bring another one having gone through that process. So I don't see a problem with it in that context.
Is there an equivalent in the UK? I mean, is Severn Trent, the innovator that lets people come in like Orange County, or is there an equivalent in the UK?
Okay, so this is a good touch point for me. So in the UK, there's $500 million up for this new grant funding available. So one of the reasons I'm here is to find one or two new technologies or propositions that we can take back. And the folks at ISLE UK are leading and running those challenges, so they're nicely framed. The next deadline is April the 6th. It's called the Discovery 2, and anyone can apply. But all the water companies can apply for those challenges. 10 years ago, it didn't exist. So the innovation ecosystem in the UK for water sector was pretty turgid. And what we've seen is one water company, Thames Water, they've gone from 3 innovation staff to 30 in the last couple of years as they've warmed up to this space. So all of the water companies are playing. Northumbrian Water are probably doing the best job of that front end. They run a festival every year. Severn Trent are one of the bigger ones. They're kind of more like a FTSE 100 organization, so they just have more mass. But we as a university, we have a partnership with Southwest Water, and we even have a building where we do the R&D. Next week, we're running their beginning of Ofwat innovation ideation session for 2026. So there's more happening.
Dan, go ahead, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
we'll go around.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think some of the differences between the UK market and US is in UK, I think you have about 32 utilities, may have the number wrong. Here we have 50,000. So, it's a challenge when you need to pilot for 50,000. Now, the one thing there are many things, but some interesting concepts that I think are going on in Europe is actually the concept of a sandbox, an innovation sandbox. So the utilities, if I understand, and correct me, can relax some of their regulatory elements to go and try new technologies. Here you cannot. So can you comment on that one?
Yeah, I think kind of our campus locations are ideal for that. So Cranfield University in the UK has its own wastewater treatment plant on campus. They can play games with that. I like the regulatory sandbox space, but what it leads to is pilots that appear to be successful without having the multidisciplinary piece. So right now we're trying to install smart real-time control systems to manage stormwater, prevent CSO spills, right? We've been trying for 10 years. We can do demonstrations on a campus basis where the estates manager is your friend. But that doesn't mean that you're ticking off all of the legal challenges that are going to be real out there in the non-regulatory sandbox domain. And then the minute you go to the next pilot out in the real world, no one will touch it. You can't get through the planning. The sandbox is not there.
So good. So we talked about sandboxes, curry on your jacket. We talked about pilots. Any closing comments on pilots? And then we're going to open it up to the audience here in the middle for a few questions before we come back and think more about kind of investing and who's investing and what do they expect to get out of it. Anyone want to wrap up anything on pilots or?
Just curious when the Water Tech Sandbox at ASU is launching.
So we actually have a test bed on atmospheric water harvesting. It's the only one on the globe. And it's really been a magnet. I mean, we have about 9 different companies participating here. We're not going to ever buy any of them in terms of an end user, but we are trying to kind of facilitate the thing. We have tours of people from other companies, see their competition, and it's been really interesting. And we measure things that the regulators say you don't have to measure. And it really is, I think, opening innovation to be sure that the water they make is true. So yes, we have a test bed on atmospheric water harvesting. Is that my curveball, Dean?
It was.
All right.
You handled that quite well.
Good. Any other final comments
Yeah,
on pilots?
I will advise the new founders to think of pilots strategically. Okay, so you don't want to open 7 different beachheads. You need to penetrate a couple of them. But when you're thinking on pilots and you're going to commit to be successful in that space, just do the thinking and the work before you find an interesting customer and say, I will pilot your technology, but maybe that's not a good fit for your new ventures. So just do the selection of the pilot because it takes effort. Do it strategically. Okay, I want to penetrate here, and with that pilot, I get access more and more, and that's a business direction that I'm interested.
2 points. If you are commercially mature as a solution, you should be getting paid. So don't do free pilots. And if you're struggling to get paid, you might want to rethink your business.
Wow, that's good. I like that. So, Dean, you agree, obviously, but like vehemently agreeing, or like,
Fully agree, yeah. I mean,
how much? How much should a startup get paid for something?
we like to say, even if it's like $1,000 and it's like ridiculously low, still saying it's paid
All right,
helps.
Christina's like, no.
But you
so-
should get
Market value.
appropriately
like-
compensated.
like,
What is whatever the commercial rate is? Why would you discount the commercial?
no,
rate?
I'm asking you. I'm the
Yeah.
moderator.
Commercial rate.
Well, we've seen sometimes it lowers the sort of barrier to entry where people can get onboarded.
No.
It takes a
No.
while just to
I'll-
get money in the
a
door, and it
treatment-
makes it easier later on.
A treatment technology, a pilot, a municipality should be paying around $50,000 at least.
Orange County,
Agreed.
just to use them, they're piloting a $25 million phase 1 at scale pilot. It took them a while to get the funding approved, but they're paying for it because they believe in the technology. And they're only customer number 2 in the US.
Wow.
So that's serious money.
That's good.
I'm just thinking about our younger engineers who are emerging with like an entrepreneurship degree, and they come in the office all day, every day with another idea, right? And all I have to do is just turn them around and say, go get a purchase order, and then you'll enter the point where we can do some mentoring.
And we talk about the water industry being slow and conservative. I think what you're saying is, Pete and Christina, people need to be more entrepreneurial in terms of the business side of these startups.
I totally agree. Like, people have to value themselves in that space. So maybe there's one small pilot that's worth doing so that you can get the customer feedback. So you've got one champion that's going to stand at your year 1 conference and be like, it works, right? But beyond that, I agree.
So good. I think there was a good conversation thinking about pilots, a little controversy here. That's good. Maybe you actually agree in the end that somebody should get paid, is how much they should get paid. So it doesn't have to be about pilots. We're going to move to some other topics. Any questions? So instead of saving them to the end, if one's burning, in here. Yeah, Yasmina. Maybe just say who you are, where you're from, and then.
Hi, Yasmina Markovsky. I am with consulting company. Name is Consor. Used to be with regulatory agency. So I saw many pilots that you cannot do anything with the data. Basically, you do it for nothing. So my question is, in so many stakeholders that we have, like how you pick who should be doing a pilot for utility? Is that ASU, like what Paul is doing? Is that consulting company? Or is that owner of the technology?
Who wants to take that?
I'll jump in. I mean, it really depends. It depends the type of technology, where it sits in the market, what the pilot is trying to accomplish, all of that. But I would say those are the types of questions that need to be coming up early, is like, who's involved? Why are they involved? What's their role after the fact? It was said earlier about what data you're wanting to gather or demonstrate. So, but at the end of the day, the customer needs to be involved. That's one common denominator. It doesn't matter what pilot or the solution. If the customer doesn't have skin in the game and they're not involved, then it's not going to work.
So when do you involve a regulator in a pilot? So a lot of people are worried if they do a pilot and it fails or doesn't perform great, they want to keep it quiet. So when do you involve a regulator? The second pilot, or so when would be a good point? I don't know, anyone who wants to take it on.
Well, I mean, I didn't mention before what is the purpose of the pilot. So is a pilot to prove to your startup and refine the technology, or you consider that it's ready to hit the market? That's a decision that you as the owner of the technology need to be able to make. It's not a regulator or so on. Now, if you are on TRL3 and you bring a regulator, well, you're going to, I mean, you don't bring the regulator without asking a lot of favors. So if you burn your network and you were not ready, that's on you. Okay, so that's a strategy of the pilot. It's not a pilot, it's a strategy behind why you want to do the pilot.
Great. Quentin?
Hi, my name is Quinton. I'm from Science Water. One of the questions I have is around pay-for-success programs. So you're saying, you know, I have new technology. It is a new way of, you know, distributing the active bacteria within a membrane bioreactor. We think that we can save you 20% a year on a certain amount of costs, right? One of the ways that you could, you know, pitch the potential pilot is say, okay, great, I'm not going to charge you anything up front for what I'm doing here, but I want a share of what you would have spent should this be successful. It's worked a lot in the impact space. You see rates of recidivism, people not going back into prison because there are people, you know, funding how they can support them once they come out for the first time and make them not go back in. Then the people who are supporting them say, okay, great, we want, you know, 20% of what the government would have spent on this prisoner. That's the financial incentive, and that's what keeps the thing growing and essentially helping more people not stay in prison. So one of the things that I'm curious about is there an opportunity for this in the water space? And if there is, where would it be?
It's already happening.
Do you have a good example by any chance?
So, if I understood you right, Quentin, it's about the customer having, you know, not paying, but then they get some sort of cut, or the vendor getting some sort of cut, depending on the deal. So, a utility in Virginia, they pilot early stage companies, they get free pilots, but they have a deal that they get a percentage of every unit sold. Another example is where they have the rights to purchase for a certain amount of time, and they provide their subject matter expertise, they provide the site, they provide all the resources, they partner at the very early stages to do the proof of value to get it to that commercial readiness, and they have a price guarantee for X number of years. So that's been going on for a very long time. But again, it goes to very small, few customers that are innovative, that are thinking creatively. You just have to find them.
Good. And we'll open it back up to some questions later. You know, within the last 2 weeks, I've had the same conversation about 3 times, twice on PFAS and once on a different topic. They sent me a LinkedIn or you know, kind of cold email, say, Paul, I want to talk to you about this technology that I want to invest in. I know nothing about water or PFAS, but I have a financial, you know, opportunity and I want to do something in water. Is this a good idea? And then they go on to describe the technology maybe after an NDA or something. So, you know, what is this role of like, are investors driving innovation? Are investors funding the right thing? Are they funding too many of the same things? We talked about pilotitis, but you talked a little bit about in the UK, how many membranes do you need to invest in new membrane companies? So if you know, you could talk, maybe Dan, looks like you're ready to go. You know, what is the role of like, who's wagging the dog on innovation? Is it the end user? Is it the investor community? Or
You're asking like 7 different questions.
okay, you just take on 1 or 2. I'm just giving you like some food for thought.
Yeah, so how many of the people here in the audience is associated or is looking to be associated with water innovation? Okay. How many of those ones that raised the hand have read the Paul O'Callaghan thesis on innovation in the water sector?
By who?
Paul O'Callaghan. So what I will tell to a person that wants to invest in water, go and read that material, so I don't have to come back, or you give me a chance to come back and tell you, I told you so.
Is this your pen name or something?
No, it's not. I mean, so when I
Tell
came,
us about it.
yeah, when I came back into the early stage in the new venture side, I was like, how long does it take to go from an idea to successful innovation in the water sector? Okay, I mean, does it take? It's like, I don't know, OpenAI. Like in a year you get $500 gazillion. No, it's not. Okay, so Paul O'Callaghan actually goes back and do a research in a lot of companies. Okay, and measures how long does it take to go through the different stages. So as an investor, you need to know the dynamics of the sector and what is reasonable to get from an adoption and revenue point of view. No, it just happened that one of the companies that he talks about is Trojan Technologies, which is part of Veralto. So, Daniel being Daniel goes back to Trojan Technologies and says, is it true? And yes, it is the case. And there is another book published, I think it's the Chemistry of Water, is by David Horan. He's the owner of a company, was the owner of a company called Biotector, which we acquired. And it talks about the journey of starting that company until they sold it to Veralto, Danaher before. So what I will tell any investor before do you go and invest your personal money in things that you don't understand? No. Why would you do that the same in water?
So Paul Callahan from
Paul O'Callaghan from
I'll raise
Tech.
my hand.
You
in
raise
there.
your hand. Yeah, sorry for
Okay.
the Argentina.
So
accent.
it is a good read. He came up with a second book as well, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, but I'm talking
yeah.
about you don't have to buy the book.
Yeah.
You can get the PDF.
So Dean, you interact a lot. You said plug and play. I came to one of your events in San Jose on all different topics. And, there was fascinating ones on like artificial chocolate, right? And, so really fascinating, innovative things. So who's wagging the tail here? Is it the investors looking for something shiny? And how do they know when they see a breakthrough opportunity in the water sector, not in the chocolate sector? But you interact a lot with them, I think, within Plug and Play, people who want to invest, but they don't know what to invest in, or?
Yeah, I would say broadly, water is very underinvested in, hardware and software side compared to a lot of other, food delivery services or other, like you might say, investor-led technologies that are trying to solve something or trying to create a new market for something that didn't exist, like an Uber had done. Water, I think, really needs to be focused on the customer, which is primarily those utilities or private sort of infrastructure providers or equipment providers like a Veralto or a Xylem, and what solutions they're looking for. It always has to have that customer pull on it, but I think it's very underinvested in, even on software technologies, which can be a little bit easier to adopt or to trial out, and there's less overhead for these startups to do. There's still underinvestment and under-adoption in those types of low-hanging fruit.
So, it seems like investment in the water sector has these high points and, we need lithium recovery, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of lithium recovery. So is it the fact that it's being driven somewhere else and there's not enough people in the water sector thinking of, artificial chocolate? Or what is it? Is it, Christina?
I know that compared to other industries, water doesn't get as much. But, and maybe not a lot of people would agree with me, but I do think venture capital and private equity in water technology is not good for water technology. That is really trying to go through that cycle to proof of value to then adoption. There is a point when that comes in, and that's important. But I think because the cycle for companies going from TRL, one idea on a napkin to TRL 9, the time is the challenge. Like, companies don't have the time. The valley of death is based on time and then the adoption rate. So we as an industry need to do better with collaborations, meaningful collaborations, concentrating investment where it matters most so that we can reduce the time to market, the time to scale. When you bring private equity, venture capital, and some of the big firms that get involved in co-invest, get an equity stake, I've seen more companies die than thrive. So I think that's one thing. But when it comes to infrastructure and financing projects, I think money in that direction. There was a panel earlier. I think that's a space that really needs money and needs creative financing and partnerships and solutions. So there's two sides of the coin.
Yeah, Pete, I'm going to ask you to let me also ask you to add to your answer. Dan got 7 questions. So this one is, in the US, TRL 1 to 3, we have the Small Business Administration, SBIR types of stuff to get things going. You mentioned this investment firm, funding in the government. So, you guys pulled out of the EU. So is there a good private venture capital funding group around water in the UK or?
I think I'm going to defer that one.
Oh, okay.
Guys in the middle,
All right.
but if it's okay, I'm going to ask you the question.
No,
Do you guys get the program Is It Cake?
sorry, say it again.
There's a program in the UK called Is It Cake? Is that a syndicated
Cake?
global thing? Right? Okay, cool. I like Is It Cake as an analogy. You've touched on the chocolate, so I'm going to go for cake. But in Is It Cake, they cut through the cake and you can see it's cake and you can taste the cake. And I'm going to come back to your question of when someone brings you an investment opportunity and they're asking, is it cake? Then I'm going to tell them to go and taste the cake, right? And one of the things that I'm really focused on, or our team's focused on, is to shift from this, let's use models to assess things, and shift to let's use good monitoring data to understand things. So we've got a catchment in the UK where we have now 500, I don't know why I'm targeting all this at Paul, hello room. We've now got 500 sensors across this catchment, but we've got 5 years of data from these 500 sensors, and we haven't done anything in the catchment yet. So we've done no change. So we've got a good benchmark data set. So now when we start to play with the ingredients in that catchment and we change it, we'll be able to taste the cake and see if it works. So I would send the guys back to go get the empirical data, and if I can't taste it, I'd tell them to walk away.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, just to build on what Christina was saying. So there is an ecosystem. I mean, this group of people will represent different point of view players in the water ecosystem. The water ecosystem, compared to other areas that I've been, energy sector, it collaborates a lot. I don't need my competitor to lose for me to win. There's plenty of problems to solve and things to do that we are not at a point where I need the other one to fail. And actually, the way that it works, I'm connected with a lot of other companies. If there is something that I see that is not the right fit for Veralto, I may introduce that person, to another company.
A nice guy.
So I think, that the ecosystem there, the ecosystem view is very important. And the other one is, price comes with, the money comes with an attachment. Okay, so you need to understand at what stage you are, what money do you want to use, and what are you asking to your network. So if you are very early and come to me and ask me for money, I'll tell you, you are not ready for me to invest. Now, if you ask me, Daniel, do you have an advice for me, on who to contact, then I may introduce you to an accelerator that I know that you are a good fit. So for anybody, you don't go to the ecosystem just to get money. You need to go to build your network and interact with that network.
So good. We're going to have our lightning round here at the end. We're almost done. So it's going to be, what is one key takeaway that you want people to kind of, understand here? And, I know we didn't get to every question, so people can, hopefully meet people during the break and ask them. So Christina, this was your idea, a message to leave people with. Like the message I'm left with is, I didn't ask for enough on my first pilot. And it was interesting. I was closer to Dean than Christina.
And when people email you, Paul, there's a cost to it, right?
Yes, one of them paid me, but the amount of paperwork to get that, it was a very nice consulting amount, but the amount of paperwork wasn't worth it. So
Great.
yeah.
Get creative on that. You're missing something.
Yeah, I tried to obey the rules.
I know I suggested this, but I actually didn't think of anything, but something came to mind. So takeaway, it doesn't matter what role you play. If you're a student, if you're in the industry or consultant, whatever it is, just research the diffusion of innovation, like study it. It's a principle. Every new solution, any industry goes through this cycle. I think if people really understand what that looks like, you can appreciate the role you play, how you interact, and it just opens up creativity and thinking. So I would study that. Takes a few minutes just to get the basics.
Great. So Dean, you're here in the Phoenix area. There's a show on PBS called Check Please. And at the end of this show, if you've ever watched it, it's like, what is your one tip for going to this restaurant? So what is your tip that you want to have people come away from here?
Well, I would just say 2 points. One, I think the world needs more water technology sandboxes where startups can test out their tech and improve it in a de-risked environment. That's a third party from their end customers because they don't often have that and shared space that they can access at a low cost. And the second one on what we were just talking about, I think there needs to be more water-specific investors. Like Christina mentioned, the traditional venture capital PE business model and their desired timelines, they want a 10x revenue in 5 years. That doesn't always work out in the water sector. So I think more water-specific VCs like a Burnt Island, seeing more of those, seeing more accelerator programs, and seeing more strategic investors like corporate venture capital arms that could be those end customers. I think that's what's needed.
Yeah, well, we should do that as we're transforming water, right? So Dan, message to take away for everyone?
I would say, hopefully you did it coming to this session is in your network, reach out and ask. And the most important piece is listen. Starting with Paul, a lot of people with a lot of experience who have made a lot of mistakes. I made plenty. Happy to share my mistake with you so you don't make it. Don't make them again. But I would say that connect and listen, learn from the network. I mean, we are, almost all the people that I've met in the water sector are aligned with the purpose of water, on solving the water challenges. So we are all walking in the same direction. There is no limitation of reaching out and trying to help the other ones. For me to get ahead and our company be successful, I don't need those ones around me to lose. I'll take them with us. I'll share our lessons.
So Pete, you get two. One is, have you been on a panel in the US on water, and did you hear anything unique? And then what's the message you want to take away?
This is definitely my first panel in the US, so we can go there. We've managed like 45 minutes without talking about AI, so I think everyone deserves a full round of applause for that. But Professor Lal started the day with HI and human intelligence. I think these kind of spaces are where we get to, do a good job of that, and we can manage 45 minutes without touching on AI. But I'm going to do it briefly because my key message, my research message is really just first get good data. And that's because the AI tools available to us in this generation can resolve amazing things as long as the information you're putting in at the beginning is good. So, don't do the pilot until you've set up the benchmarking plan behind it. And don't forget to invest in that.
So great. So let's give a hand to everyone for sharing their ideas. Thanks. Thanks for the little controversies in there. That's great. And thanks for listening.